Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sources and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge to get you well-informed fast. Have you really thought about how the rules we live by, maybe even the ones governing our own routines, actually come into being?
It's a great question because we often think of rules as fixed, right? Like they're handed down from on high.
Exactly. Are they set in stone from day one, or do they, evolve? Do they shift and adapt based on real life, practical experience, actual challenges?
Well, that's the fascinating part. When you really start to uncover the whole story behind them, you often find they're the result of this incredibly dynamic living process.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're diving deep into an ancient text from the Mahavagga. It's part of the Buddhist monastic code, the Vinaya Pitaka.
And this isn't just some, dry list of do's and don'ts.
Not at all. We're aiming to uncover a really vibrant story here. It shows how this spiritual community navigated, well, everything, from serious health crises to tricky social situations.
We're tracing the origins, getting behind the what to understand the why.
Yes. Seeing the practical wisdom that unfolds from lived experience. It's about understanding how even these, profound spiritual paths are grounded in very real, sometimes surprising day-to-day realities. We want to uncover the whole story.
It gives such a remarkable insight into how a community actually works and adapts. So where should we kick things off? Maybe with the absolute basics. Sustenance.
Okay, let's unpack that. The story really starts in a place called Savatthi. There was this severe autumn illness sweeping through the monks.
Right, they were quite unwell.
Very.
Yeah.
So much so that even simple food, like gruel, they couldn't keep it down. They were vomiting, getting incredibly thin, pale, weak.
The text described them as emaciated. You could see their veins. It sounded like a genuine public health crisis within the Sangha.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the Buddha's response.
What's striking is how immediate and practical it was. He saw how bad things were and made an initial allowance. 5 specific medicinal substances.
Okay, what were they?
Butters, probably ghee, fresh butter, oil, honey, and treacle, which is like a thick sugar syrup, maybe molasses. Fissitter, it's called.
Right. And the key thing initially.
Initially, they could only consume these at the proper time. Kale, the text says. So during the normal allowed eating period, usually before noon.
So a compassionate move, but still within certain limits. But as the sources tell us, that wasn't quite enough, was it?
No, it seems the monks were still suffering. Regular food wasn't helping. They were still sickly.
So the rule had to change.
Immediately. It evolved very quickly. Given that these 5 things had medicinal properties and the monks were in such dire need, the Buddha revised the rule.
How so?
They could now be consumed at any time, kale pi vikale pi, day or night, specifically for health reasons. It shows this incredibly rapid adaptation to just sheer necessity.
And it got even more specific, didn't it? Addressing particular medical needs.
Oh, absolutely. For instance, if monks were sick, they were allowed various animal fats, things like elephant fat, fish, porpoise, pig, even donkey fat.
Wow. But presumably not just any time anyway.
No. Very specific rules. They had to be collected, prepared, and mixed at the proper time, but then they could be consumed later with oil.
And if they got the timing wrong?
There was a penalty, a minor offense, a dukkata, a fault in conduct. It shows attention to discipline even within the allowances.
It's incredible detail.
As
What about plant-based medicines?
a huge array was allowed. Roots like turmeric, ginger, asafoetida, resins, leaves like neem, holy basil,
Wow.
fruits like valanga, haritaki, amalaka, different kinds of salt too.
So a whole pharmacopoeia, basically.
Pretty much. And these were allowed for life, for medical need. But, and this is important, explicitly not as general food. You couldn't just snack on medicinal roots whenever you felt like it.
The level of detail from specific herbs to animal fats, it just underlines this compassionate pragmatism, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests that for them, spirituality wasn't somehow separate from the messy reality of having a body. It was integrated. Health mattered. Survival mattered.
It makes you think, how fast rules have to bend when basic needs, like health, are on the line. It's not about abstract ideals then, is it?
It's about practical well-being.
So, okay, physical needs definitely shape those early rules. But life throws up other challenges, right?
Yeah.
What about things like hygiene or even really strange illnesses?
Indeed. And the rules evolved to cover those two, often arising from very specific, sometimes quite uncomfortable situations.
Like what? Give us an example.
Well, take hygiene and skin problems.
Hmm.
There's this story about Elder Belet Hasiza. He had a scrotal ailment, a painful condition.
Oh, dear.
Yes, and it caused his robes to actually stick to his body. Really unpleasant.
I can imagine. So what happened?
This led directly to an allowance for using powders, things like chalk, clay, even dyed earth to help with itching, boils, oozing, and body odor.
Practical solution.
Very. And along with the powders, they were allowed a mortar and pestle to prepare them, and even powder sifters, specifically a cloth one for fine powder.
It's so specific. And you mentioned stranger ailments.
Yes, there's a really unusual case. A monk suffering from what the text calls a non-human illness.
What does that mean? Possession? Some kind of severe mental disturbance?
It's hard to say exactly from our perspective. Could be either or something else entirely perplexing to them. But the point is this monk apparently recovered after consuming raw meat and blood.
Raw meat and blood? Seriously?
Yes. And remarkably, the Buddha allowed this specific extreme remedy just for such cases.
Yeah.
Again, it shows this incredible pragmatism in the face of severe, unusual suffering.
Wow. Okay, what about something more common, like eye problems?
There was a case of a monk with an eye disease who needed help with basic things. This led to allowances for various eye ointments like kohl or salves. The texts list things like black collyrium, cinnabar, red earth, yellow orpiment.
So medicinal eye makeup, essentially?
Sort of, and application powders too, like sandalwood and tagra. But what's really interesting is the immediate rule against using fancy materials for the pots and applicators.
No gold or silver containers.
Exactly. No luxury. Practical things were allowed. Bone, ivory, horn, wood, even conch shell, plus lids, strings to tie them, and special pouches to carry them in. Utility over everything.
That focus on practicality keeps coming up. What about headaches? I think Elder Pulindevacha comes into this again.
He does. He suffered from bad headaches, and this led to allowances for head oil, nasal drops, and even nasal tubes for administering them.
Nasal tube?
Not thukaren, though, they're called. Again, with strict rules against using fancy materials like gold or ivory, basic materials only.
And if none of that worked?
This is quite surprising if other methods failed. Even smoking medicinal substances through a special smoke pipe, a jumanetta, was permitted for relief.
Smoking in the Vinaya? That's unexpected.
It shows how far they'd go for genuine medical need. And the detail continues with chronic pain. Pulindevacha, again, this time with a wind illness, maybe rheumatism or arthritis.
Okay, what was allowed for that?
Cooking oil, even if it contained alcohol, as long as the alcohol was non-intoxicating and purely for medicinal purposes.
Interesting distinction.
Yes, and any excess oil could be used for anointing the body. Different types of gourds were also allowed for storing these oils.
And physical therapies.
A whole range. Permissions evolved through different kinds of sweating therapies, from simple sweating to compound sweating, great sweating, using hemp water, and finally a full water bath.
Sounds like a spa almost.
Well, a therapeutic one. And for joint pain, they allowed bloodletting and even cupping therapy using a horn.
Cupping, like we see today sometimes.
Exactly. And for cracked feet, which must have been common for wandering monks, special foot ointments and foot baths were permitted. The level of specific physical care allowed is really quite something.
It definitely is. But what about more serious things? Like, what if someone needed surgery?
That was covered too. The texts allow surgery, sethakama, specifically mentioning treating a boil.
And aftercare.
Detailed allowances for that too. Astringent water for cleaning, a sesame cake poultice, bandages, mustard powder if it got itchy, using smoke to help healing, salt for proud flesh that's like overgrown tissue and wound oil.
A whole wound care protocol.
Precisely. But with a crucial limitation. There was a very strict prohibition on performing surgery in certain forbidden parts, sambadhe, delicate or vital areas of the body. The reasoning given is the skin sensitivity there and the difficulty of healing properly. So it was a practical limitation based on risk.
That makes sense. What about absolute emergencies? Life or death situations?
Here, the allowances could have become truly extraordinary, almost shocking. For a snake bite, for instance, the tact mentions using remedies like dung, urine, ashes, and clay.
Seriously, those four things?
Yes, the four great excrements, as they're sometimes called in translation. It highlights the desperation. And another case, giving dung to drink for a monk who had consumed poison.
Wow. That really underscores the priority placed on saving a life, using whatever might possibly work, however unconventional.
Absolutely. And there were other specific remedies mentioned too. Cold gruel for fever, alkaline gruel for severe dysentery, a mix of urine and myrobalan fruit for jaundice, fragrant ointments for skin disease, purgatives if someone had excessive flesh.
Which might mean edema or something similar.
Possibly, plus general things like plain gruel, raw broth, and something just called covering,
Mm.
maybe like applying compresses or blankets.
When you lay it all out like that, these incredibly detailed practical allowances, they paint such a vivid picture, don't they?
It's far from just abstract spiritual rules. It's a deeply human community grappling with real-world problems, real pain, and creating guidelines to support well-being in a very concrete way.
Okay, this next story is fascinating because it shows how human nature, generosity, even miracles can cause unexpected problems for a disciplined community. Back to Elder Pulindavatcha.
Yes, him again, and his rather extraordinary relationship with King Bimbisara.
What happened this time?
Pulindavatcha needed an attendant, an Aramika, to help him build a cave dwelling he was working on.
Right, simple enough request.
So he asked King Bimbisara, who was a major patron of the Sangha. The king readily agreed, "Yes, venerable sir, I'll provide one."
But then
But then the king completely forgot. The text says he forgot for 500 nights.
500 nights, that's over a year.
Quite a lapse. When he finally remembered, he felt terrible and, well, overcompensated spectacularly. Instead of one attendant, he gave Pulindavatcha 500 attendants.
500, what did he do with them all?
Well, the king even established an entire village for them, named Pulindagama, after the elder. It shows the incredible scale of royal patronage back then.
Okay, that's amazing in itself, but the story gets stranger.
It does. Pulindavacha, as we know, had psychic powers. One day in this village, he saw a little girl crying because she wanted a garland.
A common enough wish for a child.
Right. So Pulindavacha just picked up a nearby tuft of grass, used his powers, and poof, turned it into a beautiful golden garland for her.
Wow, a lovely gesture.
But it caused immediate trouble. The royal guards saw this poor family suddenly possessing a valuable gold garland and arrested them, assuming they must have stolen it.
Unintended consequences already.
Exactly. So, to clear their names, Pulindavacha went to the palace. And to prove his powers were real and the garland wasn't stolen,
He did something dramatic.
he turned the king's entire palace into gold. Just temporarily, to make his point.
The whole palace.
The whole palace. Understandably, this convinced everyone. The family was released, and the king and the people were incredibly impressed by Pulindavacha's abilities.
Okay, so happy ending.
Well, yes, for the family. But here's where it gets really interesting for the monastic community. The lay followers are overjoyed, amazed by this display. And how did they show their devotion?
Well, yes, offerings.
Exactly. They started showering Pulindavacha, and by extension the other monks, with those 5 medicinal substances we talked about earlier, the ghee, oil, honey, etc.
The ones allotted for health.
Yes, but now they were being given in huge quantities out of sheer admiration and generosity.
And that became a problem.
A big one. The monks started getting so much of this stuff they didn't know what to do with it. They began hoarding it, filling up jars, pouches, even hanging bags of it in their windowsills.
Oh dear, I can see where this is going.
Right. The medicines started to spoil. They attracted mice and other pests. It became messy, wasteful. And the public noticed.
What did they say?
They started complaining, saying, "Look at these monks. They're living like householders with overflowing pantries and storehouses." It wasn't a good look.
So the generosity, even linked to a miracle, created a practical issue of discipline and waste.
Precisely. And the Buddha had to step in again. His response to this specific problem,
A new rule.
a modification. He limited the storage time for those 5 specific medicines, the ghee, oil, honey, treacle, fresh butter, to a maximum of 7 days.
Only 7 days.
Yes. You could accept them, but you had to use them within a week. It was a direct response to the hoarding and waste caused by that sudden influx of donations.
It's such a clear example, isn't it? How even something positive like generosity or even psychic powers can lead to practical problems that need rules to manage them. It's always this balance.
A constant balancing act between needs, generosity, and maintaining the monastic discipline.
And this adaptive quality, it wasn't just about medicines. It applied crucially to food rules as well, especially when circumstances changed dramatically.
Absolutely. There's a key moment when the Buddha himself was ill. His attendant, Ananda, personally cooked a special rice gruel for him.
A very devoted act.
It was. but it sparked a discussion, and initially it led to a prohibition against monks cooking for themselves inside the monastery grounds.
Why was that?
The concern seems to have been about avoiding the appearance of, well, being too focused on food preparation, too much like householders again, or maybe avoiding disputes over cooking facilities. So initially, no cooking inside, not even having others cook for you inside.
Okay, a rule based on appearances and potentially preventing conflict, but then
Came a severe famine in a place called Rajagaha. Things got desperate.
and the rules had to bend.
Dramatically. First, food that monks had stored outside the monastery started getting stolen because people were starving.
So step one.
Allow storing food inside the monastery for safety.
Makes sense. But they still couldn't cook it inside.
Not yet. But then cooking outside became difficult or uncomfortable, maybe due to weather or lack of facilities during the famine. So step two, allow cooking inside.
Okay, progressive relaxation. What next?
The situation got even worse. Lay people who usually help prepare food started withholding it, presumably keeping it for themselves or their families due to the scarcity.
So the monks weren't getting fed.
Right. So the final step in this famine situation, monks were allowed to cook for themselves again.
So the prohibition was completely lifted.
Temporarily, the text is clear. This allowance was only for the duration of the famine. When conditions improved, the prohibition likely came back into effect. It shows rules responding directly to survival needs.
That's incredibly flexible. What about monks traveling in remote areas?
Similar pragmatism. If they were in an area with scarce food and no lay helper, dayaka, was available to formally offer food, they were allowed to gather edible fruits themselves.
Just pick and eat?
Almost.
Yep.
There was a procedure. They had to gather the fruit, put it down, and then formally receive it as if it were an offering, acknowledging the principle even in necessity.
Interesting. Maintaining the form. What other food rule origins are there?
Well, there's the case of a Brahmin who was offering food, but he forgot to offer some new sesame seeds and honey he'd brought until after the monks had finished eating and declared themselves full.
So technically too late.
Under the existing rules, yes. But this incident led to a new allowance. Monks could accept leftover food and a tirta, meaning food offered even after they'd finished their main meal.
Practical again. People forget things.
Exactly. And another situation, Elder Upananda's family sent food for the whole Sangha while he was out on his alms round.
So the food arrived before the mealtime, but the intended recipient wasn't there.
Sort of. The food arrived, intended for the community meal later. This led to the rule clarifying that food received before the meal could indeed be kept and eaten at the mealtime. Common sense, really.
It seems obvious, but clearly needed clarification. Any other notable ones?
Yes, a story involving Elder Sariputta, one of the chief disciples. He had some kind of heat sickness.
And he was cured by?
Lotus roots. But not just any lotus roots. They were magically fetched by Moggallana, the other chief disciple famed for psychic powers.
Another miracle cure. And the rule that came from this?
It led to the allowance of eating forest-grown, water-grown food, like those lotus roots, even after the main meal, presumably if needed for health or sustenance in specific situations.
Okay. And there was a general rule about fruit, too.
Yes, clarifying that basically all kinds of fruit were permissible, including seedless fruits or fruits where the seed had already sprouted.
Why specify the sprouted seed part?
Probably to avoid the unintentional destruction of life, preventing monks from eating a seed that was viable and about to grow into a new plant. It reflects that deep respect for life.
So across the board with food, you see this pattern. Initial principles meet real-life situations. Illness, famine, travel, forgetfulness, even miracles. And the rules adapt. They're trying to live rightly, but practically within the world.
That's it, exactly. Uncovering the story shows this constant interplay.
Now let's shift gears a bit. We've seen rules adapting to practical needs and changing circumstances. But what about when things get really ethically tricky? Controversies, misunderstandings, situations that tested the core teachings?
Right. These moments often led to some of the most defining prohibitions and clarifications. They really forced the community and the Buddha to articulate the boundaries.
Like the incident with the monk who had, was it an anal fistula?
Yes, that's the one, a difficult condition. And a physician who examined him apparently made a somewhat inappropriate or tactless comment to the Buddha about the monk's private condition.
Oh, awkward.
Very. And this incident led directly to a very strict prohibition. no surgery, and also no enemas were to be performed within a 2-finger breadth of certain forbidden parts of the body.
Why so strict?
The text explicitly mentions the delicacy of the skin in those areas and the high potential for causing serious harm or infection. It was a rule grounded in both compassion, protecting the monk's dignity and body, and practical medical sense about risk.
Okay. Then there's the Sophia incident. That one is really
It
intense.
truly is. Sophia was an incredibly devout laywoman. A monk was sick and needed meat for medicinal reasons, but there was absolutely no meat available anywhere that day.
A difficult situation for her, wanting a help.
So in an act of extreme devotion and desperation, she took a knife and cut flesh from her own thigh to provide for the sick monk.
Oh my goodness, that's extreme sacrifice.
It is. And the monk, presumably unaware of the source, consumed this human flesh.
What happened when the Buddha found out?
His response was immediate and absolute. First, a total prohibition on monks ever eating human flesh, period.
Understandable.
But it didn't stop there. This shocking event prompted a much broader foundational rule about meat consumption for all monastics.
Which is?
The rule against eating uninspected meat. This means a monk cannot eat any meat if they have seen, heard, or even just suspect that the animal was killed specifically for them, for their consumption.
Ah, the seen, heard, or suspected rule. That's fundamental.
Absolutely. It's a core ethical principle designed to ensure monks aren't directly causing or encouraging the taking of life for their benefit.
And did this lead to other specific meat prohibitions?
Yes, logical extensions followed. No eating royal animals like elephants or horses, that was out of respect for the king and the state.
Yeah.
Then no eating animals considered culturally disgusting like dogs or snakes. There's even a story of a Naga king pleading with the Buddha not to allow monks to eat snake meat.
The Naga king. Like a mythical serpent being.
In the traditional cosmology, yes, it adds a layer of, well, interspecies diplomacy to the rulemaking.
Fascinating. Any others?
Yes, a very practical one. No eating dangerous predators like lions, tigers, leopards, bears, or hyenas.
Why not? Because they're fierce.
Because the scent of that meat lingering on a monk's robes could attract those same predators when the monks were meditating or walking in the forest. It was a safety measure for the monks themselves.
Wow. Ethics, cultural sensitivity, practical safety.
Right.
It's all woven together in these meat rules.
It really shows the multi-layered thinking. And speaking of large quantities and implications, remember Bhesajjakkhandhaka, the Brahmin.
The one traveling with.
Yeah.
Was it 500 carts of jaggery?
That's him. An almost unbelievable amount of solid molasses or sugar cake. He wanted to offer it all to the Buddha and the Sangha.
How did the Buddha even handle such an overwhelming gift? You can't just store 500 cartloads of jaggery.
Exactly. His instructions were incredibly wise and layered. First, he said, offer just 1 pot's worth to the monks. Then, let each monk take only as much as they individually need. Then, make sure all the monks present are satisfied.
Okay, distributing it fairly first.
Then, he told the Brahmin to offer the considerable amount remaining to the gleaners, vihadas. These were likely poor people or other ascetics who followed behind the monks, collecting leftover alms.
Spreading the benefit wider.
Right, but even after all that, there was still apparently a massive amount left over from those 500 carts.
But what was the final instruction?
This is extraordinary. The Buddha told him to dispose of the rest in a place with water where there were no living creatures so as not to harm any life.
Dispose of it. All that jaggery.
Yes. The text says when they threw it in the water, it hissed and steamed like a hot plowshare hitting water. It emphasizes the sheer volume and perhaps the problematic nature of such excess.
What an image. And the effect on the Brahmin.
He had a profound realization right there. He saw the Buddha's wisdom in dealing with such overwhelming material wealth, even when offered with good intentions. He understood the burden of excess and converted on the spot.
It's a powerful lesson about non-attachment, isn't it? Even detachment from massive acts of one's own generosity.
Precisely. It shows how even virtue, like generosity, can become problematic if it leads to unmanageable excess or attachment.
So these practical rules, these stories.
Yeah.
How did they connect back to the really core spiritual teachings? Did the Buddha explicitly link them?
Oh, definitely. There's a very clear instance when he visited a place called Padaligama. He first gave a discourse to the lay followers there.
About what?
About the 5 dangers or drawbacks of immoral behavior and contrasted them with the 5 benefits of living a moral, ethical life. Very practical guidance for lay people.
Okay.
But then it's followed by something quite profound. The Buddha had a vision. He saw deities, divine beings, flying over the area and marking out spots with cords
Marking spots for what?
for the future great city of Padalaput of modern Patna. He prophesied its future greatness as a major center for trade and communication.
A prophecy?
Yes, but he also foresaw its vulnerability, warning of 3 specific dangers that would threaten it: fire, water, flooding, and internal conflict or division, Pedicism. History actually bore this out.
Wow. So connecting morality to the fate of a whole city.
And then, right after this prophecy, there's the incident of crossing the Ganges River. The local people were struggling with rafts and boats because the river was in flood.
And the Buddha.
He and his monks miraculously crossed over in an instant, appearing on the other bank. Some texts say they walked across the water.
Another miracle.
And this prompted him to utter an udana, a spontaneous, inspired utterance. He spoke about those who have built a bridge, crossing over the flood or the sea of existence, leaving the swampy ground behind.
A clear metaphor for enlightenment, transcending suffering.
Exactly. It ties the physical event directly to the ultimate spiritual goal. And this connection becomes crystal clear in his teaching shortly after, at a place called Kotigama.
What did he teach there?
This is where he explicitly states the core reason why we suffer and wander endlessly through rebirths. It's because we haven't fully understood, haven't penetrated the 4 noble truths.
Suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path.
Precisely. He emphasized that failing to comprehend these 4 truths is the fundamental ignorance that keeps the cycle of suffering going. So you see, all the practical rules about food, medicine, conduct, they are part of the path, the 4th noble truth, leading towards the cessation of suffering by understanding its cause. Uncovering the story of the rules leads right back to uncovering the story of existence itself.
It's all interconnected, the daily grind and the ultimate truth. So it wasn't just about individual practice. It was about how the community interacted, how the Buddha handled social dynamics.
Absolutely. And his impartiality is striking. Take the story of Ambapali.
The famous courtesan.
Yes, a wealthy and respected figure in Vesali. She heard the Buddha was visiting and went out to invite him and the monks for a meal the next day, and he accepted. But shortly after, the powerful Lichavi princes of Vesali, all decked out in splendor, also went to invite the Buddha for the very same day.
Oh, too late.
Too late. The Buddha told them, "I've already accepted Ambapali's invitation for tomorrow." The princes were dismayed, trying to offer her huge sums of money to give up the honor, but she refused.
What does that show?
It shows the Buddha treated everyone equally, regardless of social standing. A courtesan's sincere invitation held the same weight as that of powerful nobles, and Amapali later generously donated her mango grove to the Sangha.
A powerful statement of impartiality. What about dealing with criticism or misunderstandings from other groups?
There's a great example with General Siya. He was a prominent follower of the Jains, specifically of Nigantha Nataputta Mahavira.
Okay, a different tradition.
Right, and Siya heard rumors, accusations really, that the Buddha was an Akiryavado, a teacher of non-action, that his teaching basically led to passivity and doing nothing.
Serious misrepresentation. How did the Buddha respond?
His clarification is brilliant. He said, "Siha, in a way I do teach non-action. I teach non-action of evil deeds, misconduct of body, speech, and mind."
Reframing it.
"But," he continued, "I absolutely teach action. I teach the action of good deeds, good conduct of body, speech, and mind." He went on to explain he teaches the cutting off, ukeravado, of greed, hatred, and delusion.
So actively cutting off the negative.
Yes. He described himself as being repelled, jaguchi, by evil as a discipliner, Venaiko, who disciplines defilements, an ascetic, tapasi, who burns away evil states, and someone who has ceased rebirth, apagabo, offering comfort and relief, asa. It was a powerful, multifaceted correction of the misunderstanding.
That's a very thorough answer. And how did Siya react?
He was deeply impressed and converted to become a follower of the Buddha right then and there.
But the story doesn't end there, does it? Regarding impartiality.
No. What's remarkable is that even after Siya took refuge in the Buddha specifically advised him, "Siha, as a prominent person in your city, you should continue to give alms and support to the Jain monks as you have always done."
He told him to keep supporting his old teachers.
Yes. He didn't demand exclusive patronage. This act of generosity and respect towards Siha's former community impressed Siha even more. It showed the Buddha wasn't just seeking followers or resources.
True impartiality in practice. Did Siha's conversion cause other issues?
It did, related to meat again. Siha invited the Buddha and monks for a meal and prepared it lavishly, including meat.
And the Jains.
The Jains, being strict vegetarians, spread rumors. Look, General Siha has killed a large animal specifically to feed the monk Gautama, and Gautama is eating it, knowing it was killed for him.
The exact thing the rule prohibited.
Exactly. Siha had to publicly and strongly deny it, stating he would never intentionally have an animal killed, especially not for his respected teachers. He explained he served meat that was available in the market, following the proper guidelines.
So this incident reinforces that triple purified meat rule.
Yes. Meat is permissible only if it's not seen, not heard, and not suspected to have been killed specifically for the monk. Sia's situation highlighted the practical application and the social sensitivity around it.
It seems maintaining the dignity and reputation of the Sangha was crucial. Was there anything else related to that?
Yes, a rather specific case involving an old monk who had been a barber before ordaining.
Okay.
He apparently got his sons, who were still barbers, to use their skills, perhaps offering shaves or cuts as a way to solicit donations of provisions for the Sangha.
Using a former trade to get donations.
Right. And the Buddha put a stop to it. He prohibited monks who had previously been barbers from carrying around barber equipment or using those connections to solicit things. It was about maintaining the distinct, respected status of a monastic and avoiding any appearance of reverting to worldly trades for gain.
So drawing a clear line between monastic life and lay professions.
That's exactly. Preserving the integrity and dignity of the Sangha in the eyes of the public.
We've certainly covered a lot of ground, really gone deep into the Mahavagga. And the overwhelming impression is that these rules were, well, alive. They weren't static laws carved in stone.
That's perhaps the most crucial takeaway, isn't it? We saw how the Buddha actually revoked allowances, like those special famine provisions, once the crisis was over.
Right, they weren't permanent changes.
No. It underlines that the guidelines were incredibly dynamic, totally context-dependent. They were living responses, not rigid dogma for all time.
And even seemingly mundane things, like where monks could store food provided by lay people, evolved.
Exactly. The idea of suitable ground, or a kapibumi. Initially, it might have just meant a specific hut or a cowshed near the monastery. But later, it evolved into needing a formally designated, marked-out area.
Why the change?
Probably reflecting the practicalities of a growing, more established community, needing clearer boundaries, perhaps avoiding disputes, ensuring things were handled properly as offerings increased. Just ongoing, practical adjustments.
It always comes back to that balance, doesn't it, between practical needs and core principles.
Perfectly illustrated by Mendaka the householder. He was another wealthy patron who offered continuous support, especially when monks were traveling through difficult, desert-like areas.
So travel provisions.
Yes. His generosity led to specific allowances for monks on journeys to carry essential provisions. Things like rice, beans, salt, jaggery, oil, and ghee.
Basic necessities for survival on the road.
Right. And significantly, it also led to an allowance for monks to accept funds, money, but only for the specific purpose of purchasing permissible items, like those provisions or medicine, when they weren't available otherwise.
Accepting money indirectly.
Yes, through a steward or attendant for approved purchases. But, and this is vital, the core prohibition against monks directly accepting or seeking gold and silver remained absolutely firm.
So acknowledging the need for resources in some situations, but strictly maintaining the principle of non-attachment to personal wealth.
It's that constant, careful balancing act again.
Which brings us to maybe the most fascinating point about uncovering this whole story. If the rules were so fluid, so responsive, how did monks know how to act when faced with a situation not explicitly covered? Was there a guiding principle for interpretation?
Yes, there was. And it's incredibly insightful. It reveals the living wisdom embedded in the system. The Buddha gave explicit guidance on this.
What was it?
He basically taught a principle of consistency. If something isn't explicitly forbidden by a rule, or even if it seems to be allowed by one rule, you have to check. Does it align with the spirit of what is generally permissible? Does it counter the spirit of what is generally impermissible?
So does it fit the overall pattern?
Exactly. If it fits with the permissible and goes against the impermissible, then even if it's not explicitly mentioned, it is permissible.
And the reverse?
The reverse also holds. If something seems allowed or isn't explicitly forbidden, but it aligns with the spirit of what's generally impermissible and counters the spirit of the permissible, then it is not allowed.
Wow. That's not rigid legalism at all.
Yeah.
That's asking monks to use their judgment, to understand the underlying purpose.
It's a system of living wisdom, empowering individuals within the community to reason ethically based on core principles, rather than just blindly following lists. It demands that they constantly try to uncover the whole story, the why behind the what, in order to live rightly.
This whole deep dive, it really hasn't just been about a list of rules, has it? It feels more like we've been looking at this vibrant tapestry of an ancient community adapting, learning, making mistakes, evolving in real time.
Absolutely. It's a profound insight into how wisdom unfolds through grappling with daily challenges, through very human experiences and interactions.
It proves that even these really deep spiritual paths are grounded in practical, sometimes messy, day-to-day realities.
And that the regulations guiding them were living responses to concrete problems, not just abstract ideas handed down without context.
So, thinking about all this, what does it mean for you listening right now? We've seen how uncovering the whole story behind these ancient Buddhist rules reveals this remarkable responsiveness to life, to human needs.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. What might actually change if we tried to apply that kind of dynamic, adaptive wisdom to the rules and structures in our own lives or our own communities? If we always ask not just, okay, what's the rule, but dug deeper, what's the story behind this rule? What was it trying to achieve then and what should it achieve now?